Hello code artists, welcome to lesson 1 of our introductory programming logic with JavaScript course. With this lesson I want to get through some very basic things like how to open or create your first project, how to create your JavaScript files. I want to show you the 4-section model for code layout. I want to make sure that you understand the term pragma, where I'm going to show you the 2 files that we're going to need for every project that we do with this course, which is a .gitignore file and a .eslint.rc file. And then finally with this lesson, I'm going to show you how to import your project into Git and then how to push it up to GitHub. So some assumptions about this course: you've already got Git for Windows installed, you already know how to use Git, you already understand what GitHub is and how to use GitHub, you've got IntelliJ and all the plugins installed, and I think that's it for the basic requirements, so let's get right to it. To properly start IntelliJ, especially when working with Git and GitHub, it's best to right-click on IntelliJ and do Run as Administrator. You're going to see this pop up right here, and you're going to want to choose Yes. That way you ensure that all of the repository stuff happens the way that you want. So IntelliJ is going to fire up here, and when it does, we'll create our first project. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to simply click on Create New Project. And then I'm going to choose Static Web on the left-hand side and Static Web on the right-hand side. And I'm going to go ahead and choose Next. And notice that it's going to have a project name here of just Untitled. I'm going to do, one too many S's there. Lesson 1. And it's putting it in the correct location for me right here. But if it's not for you, you can go ahead and type in right here the path of where you want it to go, or you can click these 3 dots and the file picker will pick up and you can choose where you want it to go. I'm going to leave everything down here alone, and I'm going to go ahead and click Finish. And it's telling me the directory doesn't exist. Would you like to create it? I sure would. So I click OK. And voila, it fires up. We see over here on the left hand side on my, get back to my project here. We see over here on the, I click DB browse right here. Click the plus. You see these files were created automatically by IntelliJ. Now what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and copy the files that I need in this directory off screen here and put them in. Copy, paste, and then I'm going to refresh my project so you'll see them. So the first file that we're going to need is a .eslint.rc. And what ESLint does is that is our code quality tool that gives us all the underlined squigglies and lets us know when we're typing things incorrectly with our code. The file will look like this, and of course you can pull these files off of our repository for the course, so you can have an exact copy. But this just turns on the ECMAScript 6 2016 version of ECMAScript, which gives us the latest functionality of what we're going to do for this course. And then the other file that we need is a .gitignore file that we're going to use. And what this allows us to do is when we integrate our project with Git, it allows us to ignore certain directories. Like eventually you'll, as you become more of a developer, you'll start seeing that you'll have a node_modules directory when you start installing libraries in your project. You don't need to push those up to Git because you can just install them whenever you need them. So it's not like they're something that you created. So you don't have to, and it's a lot of files in there. So you don't want to push those up to GitHub especially and take a ton of time. So that's all this file is used for. All right, and it won't let me close it because of this little light bulb here, so I'm going to right click and choose close. It wouldn't let me choose a little X there. Okay, so let's create our first JavaScript file. I'm going to go ahead and right click on my folder right there. I'm going to choose new, and I'm going to choose JavaScript file, and I'm going to call this code1. And I'm not going to put a file extension on there because IntelliJ will do that for me once I create it. And you'll see right there it is. And no, and I'm going to say disable that. I thought I'd already done that. And for closure, I also want that disabled so we don't see all those errors. Okay, here's what you'll probably see. So in here, it created some stuff for me automatically. I'm going to do Control A for select all and then hit the delete key because I don't want anything in there. And then what I'm going to do is off screen, I've got the code open already in Notepad++. I'm going to copy and paste in the sections one at a time and discuss so you're not sitting here watching me type it all out. Okay, so let's get started right on in with section 1 of our code. There we are. Control C, Control V, and there's our section 1. Now, as I go through this, you're going to see a code wall, and it's not going to make sense to you at all. I totally understand that because you've not done this before, and I promise as we go through the subsequent videos to this one, it'll all come clear. We'll take it nice and slow. We'll do macro videos that kind of give you the big picture if you already know a little bit about programming, and then I'll have smaller videos that break it down way more in depth, way more detail. So I don't expect you to freak out right now. You can freak out if you want, you just don't have to, because I promise we're going to get through it all and explain it all. But what section 1 is at the top here, line 1 through 6 is our code header block that kind of talks about what our code is. And it also in section 1 on line 8 we have our pragma, and let's define what pragma means. In programming, pragma means a compiler feature that you want to turn on or enable or disable for that matter, either one, and you do that with a line like this. So in this case I'm going to turn on strict, and what strict mode allows us to do is kind of stay within a set best practice parameters of code when we go to code, and so we want to enable that, and that's what we're doing right here. So that's called a pragma. The next line, which is another part of our section 1, is any library calls that we need to make. And what a library call is code functionality that we want to add to our program without having to write it all out. Somebody else wrote it for us. We just need to import it into our program. We do that up in section 1 if we want it to be globally available. Okay, so that's section 1. Let's go on to section 2. All right, section 2 is our global variable declaration area. So any variables that we want to have global accessibility, we will do up in section 2, and our global constant declaration and assignment section. And I have videos that are going to talk all about that, but for right now that's all you need to know. Section 2 is where we do all of our global variables and constants. All right, on to section 3, which is our dispatcher. Control C, Control V. Okay, so here's section 3, our dispatcher. Oops, I forgot to grab the line that said what it was. Let me pop that in there. There you go. Above this line is section 3. So what section 3 is we have a dispatch method. We'll always call it main for this course. And this calls the methods that we're going to have down in section 4 in the order that we want them to run. And then also in section 3 we have our call to main. So this is the actual call right here that runs this method, which goes into this code block, and that's what these mean right here, and runs each of these methods one at a time. All right, next up is section 4, our last section, and at the bottom of section 4 I'm going to drop in the comment block that I put in all of my code for you guys in our repository that kind of explains what the topic is that we're covering, all the different things we're covering, and kind of like an overview of the code. That's down here. But section 4 is your mutator and worker/utility methods section. So all of the balance of the methods that you're going to need for your code all go into section 4, and this is going to be your largest section of code by far. So it doesn't matter what order you put your methods in, because you're going to call them up here in the dispatcher in the order that you want. So we're going to cover all that. Don't worry about it. I just wanted you to see the 4 section of code that we're going to follow for the rest of this course. Okay, now as promised, as you see down here with the topics, we've covered all of this stuff right here except for this last piece, and we're going to do that right now. So with IntelliJ, what I like to do, this is the kind of the process that I follow to get my project shared up on GitHub, is I come to VCS and I go import into version control and I select create Git repository. And when I do that, it's going to default to the directory that my project is in, and I'm going to choose OK, and you'll see these all turn red. And then I come up to the parent directory right here of my project, and I right click on it, and I come down to Git, and I click the green plus, and I choose which is add, and it changes all these to green. The next thing that I like to do is click on VCS, and I choose import into version control, and I do share project on GitHub. And when I do that, it's going to come up, I'm going to call it lesson 1. Origin is fine. The description is, if I could type, see what I mean about my typing? You don't want to watch that. Terrible typist. And I'm going to click share. Another window will pop up right here. I do want it to say initial commit. This is all the check boxes are showing me all the files are going to get pushed up and committed to Git at the same time. And I click OK, and you can watch the magic happening down here. And you can see I successfully shared my project on GitHub. And if I want to show you guys that, I'll bring this window over right here. Here's my GitHub repository. You can see it down here. And when I click on lesson 1, there are all the files that I pushed up. Now, let me talk about a little bit of troubleshooting here with IntelliJ. Sometimes you'll see an error message down here about unable to read the remote repository. That's usually one of two things. One, you didn't right click on IntelliJ and choose run as administrator. Or two, you might have more than one account at GitHub, and so you might have an issue with your Windows credentials in GitHub. So the way that you fix that is you go to the control panel in Windows and you come to the credential manager. And then you choose Windows credentials and you come down here to the GitHub one and you click on it and you do remove. Then you fire up the GitHub for Windows tool and have it reconnect for you, and that will reset your credentials in the credential manager correctly so that you can push your projects up to GitHub. Okay, well that's it for lesson 1. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm glad you were with us, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.